On this edition of the OFN Today, Phil Kornblut covering South Carolina sports talk for 35 years on the Sports Talk Radio Network at sportstalksc.com is here to talk Clemson Tigers football after their close win in Texas last week. Also, here is Marc Lawrence, publisher of Playbook.com, to preview 3 college football games and 3 NFL games this week, including Thursday night's AFC North clash in Cincy. All this and more is the OFN Today on the Our-Lads Football Radio Network. Starts now. All right, it's Wednesday, September 12, 2018. I'm Greg DePalma. Thanks for tuning in to the OFN Today. The OFN Today is brought to you by ourlads.com with the best pro and college football depth charts on the net. PrimeSportsNetwork.com, the sleeper sports site of the industry where we debate, handicap, and inform with the very best. And Covers.com, featuring live scores, stats, and odds. Considered the most convenient and entertaining source for sports news and facts with over 45 million visits a year. If you have any questions or comments for our show, you can send us an email to ofn@primesportsnetwork.com. All right, let's get into talking some college football first. And, of course, we are going to dive deep into college football with our weekly college football show with Mitch Light from Athlon. That's at 2:30 Eastern every Thursday, so we'll do that tomorrow. And also, as I mentioned at the top, we'll be talking some college football and NFL with Marc Lawrence coming in about 15 minutes, give or take. But first, let's talk Clemson football with Phil Kornblut. Phil, good to have you back again.
Hey, good to be back with you. Hope all is well.
Yeah, likewise. It's we're pretty close proximity to each other. We're, I guess you could say, in the eye of the storm with what's going on here. So me out in Western North Carolina, and you, are you in Clemson, or how far away are you? Where are you exactly, Phil?
No, I'm in Columbia, so it's 130 miles to Clemson from here, about a 2-hour ride.
All right, and you think things are going to get kind of messy as well, right?
Well, I mean, this has a similar feel to 1989 when Hugo hit us really hard, kind of did the same thing, stalled over the coast and came inland and ripped through South Carolina, went into North Carolina hard. So this has the makings of that. Hopefully not, but, you just never know what these things are going to do.
All right. Well, best of luck to you and everybody out there in our listening audience. And, of course, that's anywhere, but especially, of course, anyone listening in the track. Okay. So now that means especially we might see because right now they're playing a game. They're scheduling the game with Georgia Southern on Saturday. So it'll probably be a messy game. But they're coming off a very close win, Clemson is, at Texas A&M. And, boy, it got kind of hairy there at the end, but the Tigers held on. What did you think was the most important thing that was taken from this game in your mind for a team and players' perspective? Coming out, this was a real tough one, but again, a good gut check win.
Well, sure. I mean, I hate to simplify it, but the most important thing for Clemson was they got the win because their schedule does not have room for error in terms of losing a game and having a strong enough schedule to be able to make it up to get into the playoffs. I'm afraid that Clemson, unless their reputation carries them, if they lose a game, it might be too much for them to recover in terms of the committee putting them in the Final Four. So they've really got to play flawless, winning football all the way through because they just don't have – you look at their schedule, there's just nobody – emerging on the schedule right now that looks scary to them, even though they didn't play their best football for much of the game out of Texas A&M. So I think the thing for them is they didn't play their best football. They made a ton of mistakes. They got sliced up by a talented quarterback, but they're not used to giving up that kind of yardage to a quarterback. But they got the win. They went into an SEC arena in front of 104,000 people in the rain, and they got the win. And so they're 2-0. It sits up very nicely for them moving forward, and they can only hope to improve on their mistakes and just get better.
All right. Then tell me from either a coaching or player's perspective, what do you think Clemson has to do to get better that you think they didn't do well in this game?
Well, First of all, looks like the two-quarterback system is going to be something that is there for the long run. It looks like they've got a formula where they'll continue to start Kelly Bryant. They will insert Trevor Lawrence at a specific time in the game, let him get some snaps, and then when it's crunch time, if there is a crunch time, go back to Kelly Bryant. So,
yeah.
That's got to be continued. That's going to be continued. Their offensive line has got a couple of areas of concern. Their guard positions are in a bit of fluctuation right now.
Okay.
They did not get a good performance. According to Dabo, he singled out guard John Simpson for not playing very well, but he expects him to play better. So that's a couple of things that has to be a worry. They haven't gotten their running game going yet in a big way. We'll see if they focus on that in the games ahead. Their throwing and catching is fine. I mean, there's no question. They got great receivers who make plays, and Hunter Renfrow is doing Hunter Renfrow things, and T. Higgins has had a couple of really big catches against Texas A&M, showing that he can go up and get and high point the high pass and make a play. So that's a given. Defensively, of course, the defensive front is doing its thing.
Mm-hmm.
They're having some concerns at linebacker. Isaiah Simmons trying to replace Dorian O'Daniel, and that's not going real well right now, just based on the A&M game. He had a few misses there, some misreads. He was out of position. And then the back end in the secondary, of course, you give up over 400 yards passing, and you have receivers running open as they did. People are looking at the safeties and thinking there's some issues there. So some work to be done at the safety spot, some work to be done at linebacker, a little bit of work to be done on the offensive line after 2 games.
Yeah, and if you take a look at the key players that were lost from last year's team, those are, and you mentioned O'Daniel, and of course also 2 high-caliber guards. And a starting safety. So that's kind of what you look at every year when you're replacing these players in specific positions. And how's that going so far? And you seem to be pinpointing the exact spots where Clemson had some key players that graduated. But it's only been a couple of games, and Texas A&M, obviously, we give them credit. Very well coached. Mond looks like he's going to be a really good player in college football. Under Fisher's guidance. So I think when it's all said and done by the end of the year, this is actually going to be a much better win than people think with this Texas A&M program. Especially we'll find out when Texas A&M plays Alabama coming up next week. And I got to tell you right now, and this is just from my perspective, any Clemson fan, but I truly believe that Clemson has established themselves just like Alabama, meaning you lose a game, you're still getting to the playoffs more than likely. That's just me.
Well,
I think that's deserving because that's how good this program has been the last several years. Doesn't guarantee it. And of course, their teams are undefeated and things like that. You're in big trouble in the Power 5, but it's very rare nowadays for teams to be undefeated anymore. And I think there's definitely room for Clemson into the playoffs if they lose. And we saw it last year with Alabama. They didn't even get to the SEC championship game, and they got in.
Right, yeah. Reputation carries a lot of weight in that room, I'm sure. And it just depends on who you lose to and when you lose and what do you do after that loss. But they don't have to worry about it because they didn't lose. So,
that's right.
They're still unblemished. They still they find ways to win close games. Their record in close games in recent years is remarkable.
Mm-hmm.
So they find a way to win. I mean, people used to pick on Clemson for losing games that they should not lose. That's not happening anymore. They're winning all their games, and they're winning the games they're supposed to win, and they're pulling out some games out of the fire, and that's why they are where they are as a national elite program at this point.
With a couple of receivers gone, McLeod and Kane, are Higgins and Rogers, are they the top 2 guys right now next to Hunter Renfrow? Yeah.
Of course, you saw a little bit of Powell emerge against Texas A&M and a little bit of Overturn as well. And, of course, they really like the freshman Justin Ross. There's Thompson. They can also work in there. I mean, they go 9 deep in their rotation at receiver. I see no reason in the games ahead why you won't see them all getting run in and run out of there to get some playing time. So, but yeah, the Higgins and Rogers and Renfrow still remain the frontline guys and the guys that the quarterbacks, especially Renfrow. I mean, in clutch time, when you need to get a first down, you need to move the chains, you need a clutch catch. That's the guy they look for tuck him in on a little curl pattern and let him sit down or over by the sideline, and he'll catch it. So he is sort of that security blanket for the quarterbacks.
Have you noticed, and I know it's only one game, I don't count the Furman game, so I know it's only one game. Do you notice anything at all different from Kelly Bryant from last year to this year?
Not really. He still runs it with great acceleration and with the knowledge of when to run and when not to. He still has that ability to hit a very small hole and get through it and pick up yardage.
Okay.
His passing has, again, it's only a 2-game sample, but his passing has been okay. I don't see anything that would be a negative for him at this point, and he's handling the situation like a pro. ESPN loves to pick up a quarterback controversy, and when Lawrence is in the ball game like the other night, they're constantly showing the sideline shot of Kelly Bryant. Is he hanging his head? Is he having the fit? No, he's had it with class and like a senior would. I think he understands the situation. And he's handling everything quite well. And I think, after 2 games, I think he's put up some good numbers. He's completing 60. He's completing over 60% of his passes, and like I said, he's running the ball smartly. So nothing to be concerned about with Kelly Bryant at this point.
All right, and as far as those big boys up front, any of the players that have stepped up and proven that maybe they're the best of the group yet, and anybody that is a step behind so far?
You mean on the offensive line?
Defensive line.
On the defensive line. Okay. Well, you got your Fab Four: Austin Bryant, Dexter Lawrence, Christian Wilkins, Cleveland Farrell. They're doing their thing. They're playing extremely well.
Okay.
They're holding their own up front. Young guys like Niles Pinckney and Albert Huggins playing a good bit. They're getting Xavier Thomas some run in there at defensive end. A little bit of KJ Henry, the other freshman. Justin Foster is a guy at the Bandit defensive end who played well against Texas A&M. He's getting an opportunity to play some here early in the year, and he has played well. So that might be a name you're looking for, a new name to watch, somebody who's kind of emerging. Justin Foster might be that guy.
All right, and as far as the ACC in general, have you had a chance to watch some of the other games at all? Miami LSU or Florida State, Virginia Tech, anything at all that you've been able to witness out of the entire conference outside of Clemson that is worth a comment or two?
Well, yeah, I think the conference as a whole just sucks, to be honest with you. It's just a bad league. Maybe Virginia Tech is going to emerge. They had a very nice opening win. Duke is 2-0, and that was a nice win for them at Northwestern.
Mm-hmm.
But, Miami got handled by LSU. Georgia Tech loses to South Florida. Virginia's still bad. Pitt got hammered by Penn State. North Carolina's awful.
Oh, yeah.
Florida State's an embarrassment right now. Louisville is, they're not very good. NC State's 2-0, but they struggle to beat James Madison. They haven't played anybody yet, and it looks like their West Virginia game's going to get canceled. They probably get smoked by West Virginia. Wake Forest doesn't scare anybody. Boston College is intriguing now. Clemson's got to go up to Boston College in November.
Mm-hmm.
They got an excellent quarterback, an excellent running back. They always play good defense up there. That could be one that could be, Clemson lost at Syracuse last year. If they go up to BC and it's a cold New England wintry kind of day in November that they're not used to playing outdoors, that could be a problem game if you're looking for something down the road.
Yeah, I absolutely. Matter of fact, I wish this season BC was playing in the other division, so we might see a BC Clemson championship game. Because I think BC, to me, I think they're the second best team in the ACC, and they're going to be the second best team. And BC's not going to get, if they were undefeated, and I'm not saying they couldn't be based on how the ACC is this year. If they were undefeated and played Clemson in that game and lost, they're not going to get the same benefit of the doubt that a Clemson or Alabama would and make the playoffs. So there's that. But then again, who knows? Maybe if BC beats Clemson, BC and Clemson will both make it to the playoffs. That'd be a lot. I'm sure the ACC would realize is that, hey, if both teams are undefeated, maybe we won't tell anybody, but maybe we'll root for BC to win because then maybe the Clemson, maybe they get the Tigers in too. But there's a long way to go before we can get to that situation. But I think that just the fact that we're even talking about that, I think is a real good thing for the ACC, especially for Steve Addazio and the great job he's doing at BC.
Yeah, I really like their team. He is doing an excellent job up there, and it's tough. You're in a market where you get no attention for the most part, even though you have a small stadium. It's still hard to fill it up, and they're trying to create some enthusiasm and some interest in their program, and they're off to a great start. If they can keep it rolling, then come November, that could be a huge game. I mean, really. The Matt Ryan years at Boston College when they just joined the ACC, they were a very, very tough out. And, they had some really good players, several guys in the pros, et cetera, but they've been on some lean time, but it looks like they're on the bounce back. If they go down to Wake Forest and win that game Thursday afternoon, I think they moved that game up to 5 o'clock. You have to give them, I would say, the leg up behind Clemson in the division.
Yep.
This game between BC and Wake Forest on Thursday, sort of that game, I think, which will be for second place behind the Tigers.
Yes, I agree. Interesting to see how this freshman plays again. This kid Hartman for Wake Forest. He might just steal Hinton's job by the time Hinton comes back. So big game starting at 5:30 Thursday. Just to remind everybody about the move up in time. So thanks about that, Phil. Phil, I look forward to talking to you again sometime soon. I wanted to get you on now because it was following a big game. And again, on the schedule, there's not a lot of big games. So I didn't know when I was going to have another chance to talk to you. Usually it's, okay, let me get Phil on when there's a big game going on. But without that, who knows? Maybe it's the Florida State game or maybe it is the BC game when we'll talk again. And but anyway, if something happens, we'll talk again. I look forward to every time you accept to come on. I appreciate that, but we'll definitely talk again later on this season, and we'll be following you once again as you're 30? Is it 35 years at this point? At the
35 seasons, yeah. Season number 35, yes, sir.
Sports Talk Radio Network at sportstalksc.com. Phil, appreciate it. We'll talk to you later on down the road.
Thank you. Always good talking to you.
Likewise. Thanks, Phil. All right, that is Phil Kornblut. And again, Phil has been on this network now for a couple years. He's done a really good job, and that's why I want to keep having him back. Really knows his Clemson football. And when you're covering covering a team for 35 years or a region for 35 years, there's a reason for it. Okay, so Marc Lawrence is coming on next, and we're going to get into college football and the NFL. And I'm trying to think, what are we going to start with? Probably, let's see, where should we start with? I've got 3 games in college and 3 in the NFL. Maybe want to start, I tell you what, maybe we'll start with college since we're talking college right now. So we're going to do Boise State, Oklahoma State. We're going to do Ohio State, TCU, and Washington, Utah. So those are some big games coming up this week in college football. We're going to get into that. And then the 3 NFL games, we're going to do the Thursday night game, the Ravens and the Bengals. Of course, that is a motivation. If you're looking for any team early on in the season in week 2 to be motivated about a game, it's the Ravens at Cincinnati. I don't think there's any mistake why the NFL Network it's on NFL Network on Thursdays, right? Or is it on? Let's see, if it's not an NFL Network, what is it on? If it's not an NFL Network, it would be on, I guess, NBC. I forget how they do that. So anyway, because I think that I checked last week on the Thursday night game, and they used to have it last year. They had it on both, and then this year I think I only saw it on one. So I don't know if they made an arrangement that we're just going to keep it on NBC. Maybe that's what they did. But bottom line is that's a Thursday night game, and it was a smart idea by the network to decide to put that game on, especially early in the season. You don't really know. I mean, I know a lot of people out there, they weren't really sure about the Bengals, and you still can't be sure about the Bengals just because they beat the Colts. So you don't know, do you want to schedule the Bengals late? You don't know. You don't know what kind of season they're going to have. Early, that's a different story. Of course, I like the Bengals, and we'll get into that in a little bit. Of course, if you've been listening, you know that I had them winning the division and Baltimore finishing in second. And this could be the type of game that could dictate that. Because I'll tell you right now, if the Bengals win that game, with all the motivation Baltimore has, and after the way they played last week, if Baltimore can't find a way to beat the Bengals on Thursday, then I feel pretty good about the Bengals winning the division. But it's a long way to go. Look, the Bengals are a 1-point dog. That right there, even just see, that's the thing where I'm kind of, I like to look at those games. You don't get a whole lot of revenge games in the NFL. It's not like college. But in the NFL, and I don't really think about it as much either, even when you have one, because different players every year. It's just different in the NFL. Revenge, oh, it's a rematch of the Super Bowl, or this. See, this to me is bigger than a rematch in the Super Bowl. A rematch in the Super Bowl. Whatever. Let's say the Eagles play the Patriots this year. I don't even know if they do. They probably don't. But let's just say if they did. Okay, revenge. I don't know. Okay, sure. The Patriots would like to, if they were playing them, let's see if we can get back at them. But I would give this game more credence as revenge because they're division opponents and they hate each other and they play twice a year. So I think it matters more. So that's why it's a rare circumstance for me when you've got a revenge game, a division game. You got all that wrapped into one. And that's why I would say, hey, Baltimore is a team that you would want to jump on for that reason alone, let alone, of course, the way they played last week. But as I said, the Bengals were my pick to win the AFC North before the season began. They came through for me last week. And I'm kind of hedging and wondering, which way I should actually go on that one. And I know I said maybe we'd start off with college football, but we might as well start off with this one in the NFL, Mark. As I introduce Marc Lawrence to the program. And, Mark, I'm glad that you picked this game. It's a Thursday night game, so that's always a smart thing for us to do. But also I think this is just definitely going to be one of the fun games of the weekend because of the fact that, again, you love the unique, rare circumstance of a revenge situation as such a death nail as it was to Baltimore, the way they ended the season last season at the hands of these Bengals.
It's exactly what it was. You're talking about a situation in a game where, number one, it's a division rival. Number two, there's been a lot of close call intensity type games inside this rivalry here as well. So you make a case for both teams. The Cincinnati win over Baltimore cost the Ravens a playoffs. Big motive for the Ravens, if you will, in that contest. But then the other side of the coin, Cincinnati, back-to-back losing seasons here, looking to regain their claim to being a good team off a positive win against Indianapolis last week. So you can make cases, obviously, for both sides in this contest.
Yeah, keep in mind, too, the Bengals are 7-2 in their last 9 straight up against Baltimore, including that win. So when you've got these division rivals and there's key players that have been around for both teams during this streak, including the quarterbacks, so when you've got and the coaches, so when you have that, I do think there's something to it, and I think maybe that's why the game ended the way it did last year. Just the Bengals just seem to have the Ravens' number right now, and that's what kind of scares me about this game. If it was another situation, I might easily say, yes, I'm going all in on Baltimore. They've got revenge. They look great. I picked them to go to the playoffs when the season began, but in this circumstance, I did pick the Bengals to win the division. This is a home game. You got to win these games. And then you flip it around also, and you go, yeah, but Baltimore's the 1-point road favorite. And so the Bengals are sitting there as a home dog on Thursday Night Football. What does that mean?
Well, I think you're going to find this game probably go off pretty much at pick. Right now as we speak, I see both teams favored in the game.
Okay.
Which means there's going to be a lot of opinion on both sides of the contest, if you will. But I look at my database and I drill down and I see what edges can I find in the contest. And the one I find that stands out the most is the fact that NFL team that scored a lot of points in the season opening game really kind of come back to earth in game number 2. Especially when they're on the road. If you take a look, the last 33 times it's happened, they've only beat the spread 11 times, which would be obviously working against Baltimore in this contest off that big win over Buffalo, as it were. The other side of the coin is I like to look at coaches and how they perform, either with their teams in division games, certain times of the month, so forth and whatnot. And if there's one bright spot for Marvin Lewis at Cincinnati, it's been his play in the opening month of September. He's been really good, 30-18 to the spread, which is a real nice solid number. When he comes off a double-digit victory, he's 7-1 straight up and 8-0 to the number. So I kind of see personally here Cincinnati come hungrier to this game than Baltimore, if for no other reason. Baltimore's coming off that big, fat blowout win over Buffalo.
Yeah, I was wondering about the one that you mentioned. The away team scored 40-plus in Game 1, and like you said, 11-20-2 against the spread overall in that situation. And so I'm not surprised by that. I mean, that happens a lot in the NFL as far as when you see certain teams win really big one week. It all depends. You got to pick the right spot, and I think this is one of those where the numbers do make sense based on opening day and then the next week, because that's something that you don't see in college. Because college, you can just blow teams out every week. But in the NFL, there's so much parity, and it's so hard to win from week to week that there does seem to be something about when teams, and average teams, I'm not even talking about great teams, but even the average teams, like a Baltimore Raven team, has a big blowout win. Sometimes they do just come back down to earth the very next week. And then you mentioned Marvin Lewis, and there's a reason why Marvin Lewis is still the head coach. It ain't because he's good in the playoffs, but he's been a very good regular season coach for the Bengals. That's why I picked him to win the division. I think too many people were dissing them after one really bad season. I think they just forgot that this is a team that usually plays pretty well during the regular season.
They do, especially early on. When they put themselves in the position to win or at least make the playoffs in games. It's just their bugaboo has been their poor performance in the month of December, and even worse, if they happen to make the playoffs, they've been, as you know, no shows in the playoffs. And
we actually both had Cincinnati yesterday as our top pick. So, last week. We both had them as our top pick. So
yeah, going up against the Colts.
Correct. Yeah, it wasn't an easy one, but they never are, especially on the road. But they got it done, and that's all that matters. Okay, let's get to the big one in the NFC North. So we got the AFC North game of the week. Now we got the NFC North game of the week. Minnesota at Green Bay. Of course, this is all contingent. The odds are out. Green Bay is a 1-point favorite. So everybody believes that Rodgers is going to play. I guess we'll find out. I don't know if I haven't heard any McCarthy say he's going to play, but I think we all get the idea that chances are he's going to play. Because let me just ask you a question. If he doesn't play, what do you think the line is?
No Aaron Rodgers, knowing that it's Deshaun Kaiser, my God, that would get the start, the human turnover machine.
Yeah.
If that were the case, you'd find the Vikings at least a 6-point favorite.
I agree. I thought so, yeah. And then you know what? It might be a good play, too, taking the Vikings in that spot. But Packers are a 1-point favorite. After the way that they won last week, you could look at it two different ways. One, which is the way I'm going to look at it, is such a big win, such an emotional high. Rodgers is awesome. Throw in the fact that the last time Rodgers played Minnesota, that's when he got hurt. He's still got motivation. There's a lot there to prove. The Vikings are the champs of this division, and it is in Green Bay, and it's only a point for the home team. So I'm kind of leaning towards the Packers, but on the other end, if you like the Vikings, you're going, hey, we're the champs. We're the better team. Even though it's only a point, we're the dogs. The Packers were lucky to win the way they did. They shot their wad. They're coming back down to earth. So you can look at it a couple of different ways, but I know you, of course, are going to look at it completely different by going inside the numbers.
Well, obviously the number is all that counts in the game, and it's going to all be predicated upon Aaron Rodgers' availability. But assuming that he is going to be behind center in this game, there's a couple of things. I mentioned handicapping coaches. I also like to handicap quarterbacks. Aaron Rodgers is outstanding in his NFL career in division games. He realizes the importance of division games. They count twice as much as non-division games, and that's evidenced by his 37-19 career spread record in division games. He's been outstanding that way, and that's even with the point spread loss to the Bears Sunday night. Then on the flip side, we're talking about coaches, and Mike Zimmer, and obviously the best coach in the National Football League to the point spread. He's 45-21 to the number, but he's only 12-11-1 to the spread in division games, which means Mike Zimmer is really chewed up in games outside the division, just been 500 average at best in division contests. My allegiance is going to go to, I'm going to call him Willis Reed. That's Aaron Rodgers, who limped out of the locker room at halftime to lead his team from a big-time deficit to a win last week, much like Willis Reed did with the New York Knicks way back in the day. I think Willis Rodgers gets the job done in this game.
Yeah, Rodgers again, 11-0. So he's won 11 straight games over the first 6 games of the season.
In division play.
In division play. Yes. So that,
exactly.
he barely got it done last week, but like you said, he wasn't able to cover the spread. This week, he gets the win. Chances are that's not something you got to worry about. But we'll see.
Well, if he gets the win, he's happy. The Green Bay Packers fans are happy, and most likely we are too.
Yes. Where
this point spread line sets as we're now speaking at -1.
All right, and then the other game is another division matchup. This one in the NFC East, and the Cowboys are a 3-point favorite over the Giants. And to tell you the truth, I was looking at that spread and I was like, okay, I watched the games last week, so I got to know what it is that Vegas thinks they know. Because they got Dallas as a 3-point favorite for a reason. I don't know. All right, they swept the Giants last year, 49-13, but that was only 1 year. I don't like the way Dallas looked at all. Didn't think Carolina was one of my top picks last week for a reason. The Giants, with the weakness of their offensive line, going up against a bad matchup with the Jags defense, and the Giants still had a chance to win that football game. It's one game. I don't care that they lost the game. I don't care that they didn't score a lot of points. They played one of the top defenses in football, one of the best teams in football last year, and they almost won, and I'm supposed to pick the Cowboys this week? No, I don't think so.
Well, you're talking about a Dallas Cowboy football team that's kind of in turmoil or flux, if you will, right now. Offensive line struggling. No wide receivers. I mean, the smallest set of wide receivers in the NFL. There's no marquee name wide receiver on the team, so it all falls on Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott. And if you stack the box and shut them down, you're going to shut down the Dallas Cowboys. The New York Giants are fully aware of that. And on the flip side, you talked about the Giants last week in that close call loss to Jacksonville. Were it not for a pick 6 in the fourth quarter, the Giants, we'd be talking about them being 1-0 and Dallas 0-1 in this game. So the Giants did indeed play a good game last week against Jacksonville, a team with a much better defense than Dallas, and I agree with you. I think the plus 3 points is a value take in the game.
And also, Cowboys aren't necessarily a very good home favorite team. I mean, I've noticed that over the years. This goes back a long time, and I know they were worse. I think they were worse a few years ago. There was like one run they were going through. Whenever they were like a touchdown favorite or something like that at home, I mean, they were just really pathetic. But overall, even over a longer period of time, they just haven't been very good at that spot.
No, under Jason Garrett, they've really burned money at home, almost like oil wells burning up in Dallas. 23-38-1 to the spread is Jason Garrett at home with the Dallas Cowboys. So they've been money burners. And the other side of the coin is I have a database on Sunday night games, NFL games that are played on Sunday nights. And the fact of the matter is home favorites in Sunday night games in division contests where the opponent comes in with revenge, as the New York Giants do, they're just 37-50 to the number. So you put all these numbers together here, and the fact that Eli Manning himself has played really good in division games of a loss, 12-3 to the number, I have to like the New York Giants' chances to make this game at least competitive, if not win.
All right, let's talk about 3 big games in college football. And one of them is Boise State at Oklahoma State. Big opportunity for a Mountain West team, Boise State, to kind of get back their reputation. They have still been able to win big non-conference games before. They took care of Oregon as a dog in the Las Vegas Bowl, so they did it last year. They beat Washington State at home a couple of years ago. They beat Washington at home in 2015. So even though Chris Peterson's not there, they continue to win these big non-conference games. And now they take on this Oklahoma State team. Now, look, I watched Oklahoma State play so far. Every year you got to watch these games. I know some people, they kind of wait, and I understand that, especially just fans in general, but there are even a lot of people in our industry that I don't think they take enough time to look at teams like Oklahoma State when they play Missouri State or South Alabama. They'll look at the score, they'll look at the stats. Well, I got to watch some parts of these games. That's why I love it when I can find them on television. because especially when they have new quarterbacks, and new key players, I want to know, how do they look? Because if they don't look very good, or I'm not very impressed with the way they look against Missouri State or South Alabama, then I'm certainly not going to be that impressed against Boise. And I'm not so sure that I feel comfortable taking Taylor Cornelius against Boise State. Rippon's a better quarterback. We saw what Oklahoma State's done before with Gundy in these spots at home, non-conference favorite, things of that nature. But you know what? I just think Boise State's a better football team, and the fact that they're only getting 2.5 at Oklahoma State proves it.
Well, it does, because if the game were played on a neutral field, they'd be the small dog. Or they'd be the small favorite, I should say. So, obviously, Las Vegas agrees that they may well be the better team coming into this contest here. They came in, they steamrolled Connecticut in their last game, put up 818 yards of offense in that football game. And Boise State happens to be right now sitting atop the group of 5 teams in the rankings. Much like Central Florida did all of last year, now Boise State assumes that position coming into this football game. They can obviously reassert themselves with a big win here, and I love the fact that this team is very rarely a dog. 25-10 to the spread. The last 35 they've been the underdog, and 9-1 as an underdog when they have a winning or an undefeated record like they do coming in here. So you put all this stuff together with the fact that Oklahoma State, as you mentioned, has beat literally 2 sisters of the poor to start this football season here. And in fact, go back and you look at them the last 6 times, Oklahoma State has taken on an undefeated opponent. They're just 1-5 to the number. I think this is where upsets occur in situations like this, and I like Boise State to do just that on Saturday.
All right. Now we've got the big one on Saturday night. Matter of fact, I talked about this yesterday, how if it was up to me, if I was the best way for me, I think, as a fan to enjoy football, both NFL and college, would be if there was no Thursday night NFL. Do just like you did last week. Have 2 NFL games every Monday night. So take that Thursday night game, put it on Monday night early, have an early and late game. This way you satisfy the players who don't like the short weeks, and then make sure you get a big marquee Thursday night college football game. We never get marquee Thursday night college football games. It's, once a year maybe. So then on Saturdays we got to deal with 4 or 5 big games all at the same time. Either 3:30 or prime time. It's just unfair for the fan to have to try to watch 5 games at once, especially if he doesn't have a DVR or anything like that. And when you take a look at this particular weekend, I think that it's obvious that all the big games, the games that you want to watch, are on Saturday night. You've got Ohio State, TCU, USC, Texas, Washington, Utah, even Arizona State and San Diego State. So you got some big games coming up. But the Ohio State TCU game is definitely the best game of the week. We get to see exactly where TCU stands. They're a 2-touchdown dog in this one at home. They haven't really played anybody. They look sluggish in that SMU game for a while, so that's not very good. But Ohio State just continues to cruise. Offensively, they're a machine. That's what they are. But no Urban Meyer, and that was something that we figured would not be an issue, and it hasn't been. This is a TCU team that's a lot different from Rutgers and Oregon State. I just think it's too tempting for me to pass up, though, thinking that Ohio State won't win by 14 points or more, because they could score 14 points in 2 minutes.
Well, they're capable of doing just that. The odds makers agree with you, making this 2-touchdown favorite, if you will, in the contest. And the question I have to ask you, Greg, is at the beginning of the season, upon the Urban Meyer suspension announcement, would you have bet the Buckeyes were going to go 3-0 straight up and against the spread in those 3 games without Urban Meyer?
Well, interesting. I would have. I guess that. What would it depend on? Is it even money?
Well, that's a good question. What the odds would have been, but the bottom line is probably not. Okay, just the fact that they have to go 3-0 perfect both ways, and without their coach.
Yeah, this would be the one. This would be the one. Yeah. That I would be nervous about. Correct.
So, and this is also in amongst those 3 games that I'm talking about. This is the toughest game the Buckeyes have on their schedule. I mean, they played 2 literal cupcakes to begin the year, both at home, Oregon State and Rutgers. Yep. And if you go look at Ohio State, what they've done, what they've been famous for doing here, in the past couple of seasons is losing on the road in games they shouldn't lose. You take a look at, they went to Iowa last year as 20-point favorites and lost the whole game by 31 points. The year before, they went to Penn State as 17-point favorites and got beat in Happy Valley straight up. This is the kind of a spot where Ohio State trips up in, and they do it against good teams with good coaches. You've got in Gary Patterson here, a terrific coach who's dominated the Big Ten. He's played them 6 times. He's beat them 5 times on the scoreboard, only lost by 1 point to Michigan State. And you've also got a team here that excels in the role that they're in, 9-1-1 to the spread as a double-digit non-conference underdog.
Nice.
I have to like TCU's chances in this football game. This is a kind of a trap spot, if you will, for the Buckeyes here, and I'm sure they're very fully aware of it. Yes, they have the talent, the ability to go out and steamroll anybody on any given week, but when they don't, it's usually in situations like this, and I think TCU becomes a real live dog in this contest.
Yeah, I wonder what see, Ohio State, unlike some other teams, will draw. Now, I don't know exactly, because this is a neutral site game, even though it's in Texas. So I don't know. I mean, the Buckeyes are gonna the fan base is gonna be there, but you would believe still that it's probably gonna be like, I don't know, 65-35, you think?
Well, the Buckeyes are going to take fans. There's no question, because they travel real well. But the truth of the matter is, this game is at Jerry's World. Okay.
Yep.
Well, Fort Worth and Dallas are Twin Cities.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
So this is, for all intents and purposes, a home game for TCU.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. As far as being able to feel comfortable and not have to travel, and they're more familiar, the familiar surroundings. Plus, again, they will have the home edge, and then also not only the home edge just because of fans, but you're also going to anytime there's a neutral fan base in a game, you're going to go for the underdog, especially the home underdog. So that's why TCU. That's why I was thinking about 65% TCU, and who knows, maybe 70, maybe 75. We'll find out as far as how the tickets are. But anyway, either way, I just wanted to point that out. But, yeah, I completely see where you're coming from, especially even though Ryan Day is auditioning for potentially taking over for Urban Meyer. A lot of people believe he's going to be a head coach one day, whether at Ohio State or somewhere else. So, okay, here's your chance, because if this game is close in the fourth quarter, you got to give the edge to Patterson.
Well, that reminds me of a story somebody once told me. He was a real celebrated bookmaker in Las Vegas. I used to do a live radio show every Friday night. We were in about 35 cities across the country. We'd take live calls. And he was a friend of mine. He would call in from Vegas with an updated Vegas report. And we were talking about a game that was on a neutral site. It was a bowl game, in fact. And we were talking about the crowd and how much of the crowd would be one-sided or against another. And he said to me, Mark, he says, you tell me the last time that a fan scored a touchdown in a game that decided the point spread. The fans aren't going to score here. It's going to be the players on the field that's going to end up winning the football game.
Yep.
So, in a case like this, yes, there'll be more allegiance probably to TCU, but the bottom line here is Gary Patterson has to out X and O the Ohio State interim head coach here.
Yeah, and look, Urban Meyer gets to coach at practice, so he gets to be a part of the X's and O's process, and
they're going to carry his game plan.
Yes, and that is why a lot of people were not happy with the suspension. Because you're going to do it right, you send them home for 3 weeks. It's not. I mean, because really, especially with those first two opponents, who cares if he's on the sidelines? This is the only game that may matter. If he's not on the sidelines and it's close in the fourth quarter, and Urban Meyer is not being able to make critical calls that may come into play in this game, and so when it comes to that, and you're just thinking of it as a I don't know, you just got a gut feeling. You have to throw that always into the equation and things as well. You just say to yourself, yeah, is this the game where Ohio State is going to get theirs? Is this the game where Urban Meyer, they're going to pay for it, and if it's close, you're going to find that out. And like you said, it's not that it hasn't happened before to the Buckeyes in recent years. So
no, and I agree with you 100%. I think Urban Meyer should have been hands off. in a suspension. It almost goes back to the point where my feeling when he was awarded a 3-game suspension, it was like you're either pregnant or you're not.
Yeah.
So why just a 3-game suspension? In truth, if he was going to be suspended, it should have either been fired or for the whole year, and it should have been hands off. But nonetheless, it is what it is. It's all politics, and this will be the last game the Buckeyes will play without Urban Meyer on the sidelines.
Yeah, they get the big test at the whiteout at Penn State at the end of the month. That'll be a huge game for the Big Ten. And they also have to travel to Michigan State on November 10th, and they get Michigan at home on November 24th. So Ohio State loses this football game, they are going to have to run the table and win those 3 games and all the other games, including the Big Ten championship game, in order to get to the playoffs. So that's how big this game is for the Buckeyes.
Well, it's a huge game. There is no question about that. But, on the other side of the coin, it's equally huge to TCU vaults them. Vaults them maybe into the top 10, okay?
Sure.
And with that, okay, then they begin their Big 12 trek starting next week with Texas. So back-to-back wins, Ohio State and Texas, puts TCU in the college football playoff talk.
Yeah, this has to be definitely one of, if not the biggest game of Gary Patterson's career. This is huge. TCU has not been the same TCU. Sure, you go back to the Boykin days, that season when they felt they got stiffed, and Baylor and so forth, and nobody got to the they didn't have a Big 12 championship game, and nobody represented the Big 12. But even before that, you have to go back to when they were a really good defensive program under Patterson. That's when they really had some sleeper teams. They were always a fun team to watch when they first got into the Big 12. They were always tough to play because they had great defenses. Well, they better have a good defense against Ohio State, because they're just not going to be able to go toe-to-toe with the Buckeyes. They need to step up and stop Ohio State and keep the Buckeyes probably, they might have to keep the Buckeyes under 30 to win the game.
Well, they might have to do just that. There was a time when they were a very good defensive team. Maybe they got a little bit soft here in their season 2 years ago when they had that 6-7 year. But through it all, you go back and you look, the first 4 games of the season, TCU 11-1, straight up the first 4 games of the season here coming into this contest.
Let's finalize our picks and games this week by going to Washington and Utah, and a huge game already. Once again for the Huskies after the disappointing loss to Auburn, which could very well take the Pac-12 out of the playoffs if none of these teams are undefeated. Washington's probably saying, though, hey, you know what? It was almost like a road game. It was a close game. If we run the table, hopefully they'll give us a shot. But they're not making the playoffs if they don't win this football game. And this series with Utah has been pretty close recently. If you look at it, Washington, even though they've won 10 of 11 all-time versus Utah, the Utes have covered the last 3 years and won the game back in 2015. So these have been pretty close games. Last year was a 3-point Washington win at home as a 17-point favorite, and that was a very good Washington football team last year. So this one's at Utah. It's a 6.5-point spread, so you can get about 7 if you want it for Utah. I don't care that Utah struggled last week against Northern Illinois. You go up to DeKalb, and everybody knows how difficult, especially non-conference teams. When you got to go up there, you're not familiar with the surroundings. It's a tough place to play, one of the elites of the MAC. So I don't care about that result. I don't look at that as a negative for Utah. This is a game I'm staying away from because I think it can go either way.
Well, I happened to listen to an interview with Jim Mora Jr., and they were talking about this football game coming up, and he made the statement, and he said basically that when you go into Salt Lake City and play at Rice-Eccles Stadium, it is one of the hardest stadiums at all to play in. He says the atmosphere is unbelievable.
Yep.
The support that the Utes get in that stadium. He says it's very, very difficult to go in there and come out alive. You've got a couple of things working here, I think, in Utah's favor here. Aside from Whittingham being an excellent coach, and we love to put these coaches in the database. But if you look at him in his career, when he's been an underdog and he failed to beat the spread his previous game, he's 18-6-1, 13-1 his last 14 games in this particular role. And you also note that this is a blackout game. You're going to see nothing but black, the fans wearing nothing but black. It's one of these Utah blackout games like the Penn State whiteout. this becomes a blackout. And in 10 blackout games at Utah, they've won 8 of those football games.
All right. Well, look, a couple of years ago when Washington went to the playoffs and lost that game against Alabama that season, which was 2016, they lost one game. That was the game against USC. But the game at Utah, that was a close football game, too. It was only a 7-point game. That was a game, play here, play there. If I remember correctly, I think that was the game that Dante Pettis had a great game returning kicks. And if they didn't have a couple of big returning, kick returns from Dante Pettis, then I don't know if Washington survives that game. So just shows you, again, how tough it's going to be for Washington. But just imagine if the Huskies, who had playoff and championship aspirations, start the season 1-2.
If they have 1-2, if they're 1-2, those aspirations are out the window.
Yeah, forget that. They're gonna have a hard enough time winning the Pac-12 championship.
Exactly.
If they lose this conference game against Utah. All right. And by the way, before I let you go, Mark, anything that you noticed from last week's first week in the NFL that stands out to you at all? Anybody impress you the most or disappoint you the most?
Well, impressive obviously was Tampa Bay and their upset win. Disappointing was New Orleans in that same contest. That was impressive, for what they did, but sort of expected because New Orleans, with all the success they met with last year, I feel they did it largely because of a rarity, and that was having had both the offensive and defensive rookies of the year on their team together in the same season. So I look for a step back by New Orleans here this football season. We saw a little bit of that. What also impressed me was the Kansas City Chiefs winning another football game, yet getting thoroughly outstatted in the football contest. They got outyarded 541 to 362. They do it with smoke and mirrors every year with Andy Reid. It's because of special teams and the play they get.
Yep.
That kind of impressed me also. And also, I would say the last thing is don't give up on the Oakland Raiders just yet.
Sure.
That win by the Rams 33-13 wasn't as impressive as the scoreboard indicated.
Mm-hmm.
They actually outyarded the Rams in the football game by 30 yards in the contest. So, don't get ready to put the RIP sign up on the Raiders just yet. I think there's some good football to be played by Oakland.
Yeah, I mentioned that as well yesterday, that, look, if Derek Carr doesn't make some stupid mistakes in the game, then the Raiders could have won that game. He just that's the thing. He has to you have to stop. Carr's done that in his career. He's had mostly a good start to his career, but he still has some maturity to he's got some growing up to do. You don't, in key spots as a dog in a game like that, you don't throw end zone interceptions. You just can't do it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
but he's a Pro Bowl quarterback, and every Pro Bowl quarterback, even Aaron Rodgers, even Tom Brady will have a clunker, will have a bad game. Unfortunately for him, it was on national television under the Monday Night Lights. And
how's the Sports Data University going, Mark?
It's going real well. We're in beta mode right now, and we're going to be ready probably to go full launch in about 2 or 3 weeks. Things are looking really good. We're getting a lot of excitement, a lot of people registering that want to attend classes and want to learn how to become better at this business and do that. And that's exactly what Sports Data University will provide them, that platform to attend live classes and pick the heads of the experts. So when it's ready to go full launch, you'll be the first to know. I appreciate it as always, Mark. Enjoy the games this week. We'll talk to you next Wednesday. Hey, be good, Greg. Have a great week. Thanks, Take Mark. Care. You got it. That's Marc Lawrence. And, again, you could check out his website at playbook.com. He's with us every Wednesday to go into 3 NFL games, 3 college games. And once I get Mark's games, then I could turn our attention to Thursday with Teddy and Friday with Dave, and I could take games that we're not talking about today. And I could say, all right, Teddy, let's talk about these games. And Dave, all right, let's talk about these games. So we kind of split them all up and try to get as many games on the board every week in the NFL and college football. But Mark gets it going, and he goes after some big games. So he's stealing all the big ones from the boys. Look, it doesn't mean I'm not going to talk about some of the other big games on Thursdays and Fridays. It just means that it'll give us an opportunity to find out which other games that we'll include in our package on Thursday and Friday. We also want to thank Phil Kornblut, of course, for joining us at the beginning of the show to talk Clemson football. And that's going to wrap it up. Now, tomorrow we've got 3 shows. We have 3 shows every Thursday. Again, Teddy Savransky will join me to go over NFL college football. Then we've got Mitch Light, college football. We'll go with good college football talk. We get back and forth on everything going on, the big headlines, and obviously the games, and we'll also give our picks each week. That includes Mitch and I give 10-point double-digit dogs each week, so that's always fun to win outright.
And Jerry Ratcliffe would join me to get things started, as he does every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern with the ACC Football Report. So back to back to back every Thursday starting at 11 a.m. Eastern. But you don't care about the live shows. You just want to know when those shows are available on demand. That's why you got to follow us on Twitter at PrimeSN, as in Sports Network, PrimeSN. You follow us. We'll let you know when the shows are available on demand at ourlads.com. And also, don't forget to send us an email at ofn@primesportsnetwork.com. Send us an email if you have any questions or comments for the show. You could also send those questions or comments to the Twitter page at PrimeSN. All right, that's it. Thanks for listening to the OFN Today on the Ourlads Football Radio Network. You know the drill. Alpha Mike Foxtrot.